first, the total emotional manipulation by the media over the current border crisis. It was the image that shocked the conscience of a nation, or so the media told us. A little girl separated from her asylum-seeking mother at the border, crying her eyes out. It was heartbreaking. It was said to symbolize a cruel and heartless Trump policy. And the June 12th photo of the 2-year-old from Honduras went viral in news coverage around the world. Words like callous, soulless, craven. Trump, said the New York Daily News. The image of the child was so powerful, Time magazine paired it with the president to try to make, of course, a political statement.
The cover says, "Welcome to America."
A now iconic photo taken last week captured that girl as her mother was detained.
The First Lady of the United States went to the border today, which was a good thing, but she did not accomplish as much as that little girl standing up to the First Lady's husband on the cover of Time magazine.
The controversy over what's happening at the U.S. border, it's made a lot of people obviously step back and assess what it means to be an American. And Time magazine is doing it this way.
Although ridiculed, many Trump supporters were skeptical of the image, and with good reason. Well, the crying child was real, but the story behind it was not. Her father said the girl and her mother were never separated and are still together at a family residential center run by ICE in Texas. Border Patrol agent Carlos Ruiz explained why the girl was crying.
I personally went up to the mother and asked her, "Are you doing okay? Is the kid okay?" And she said, "Yes. She's tired and thirsty. It's 11 o'clock at night."
Here's another twist. Dennis Javier Varela Hernandez said his wife Sandra was seeking political asylum, but in fact went to the U.S. to find a good job. He also said she had already been deported from the United States. Despite the fact that ICE confirmed that the mother and child were never separated, incredibly, Time magazine is still defending the cover, while conceding that the original story misstated what happened and that, quote, the girl was not carried away screaming by U.S. Border Patrol. Time editor-in-chief Edward Felsenthal doubled down in the statement, insisting that the photo, quote, became the most visible symbol of the ongoing immigration debate in America for a reason. And he said, our cover and our reporting capture the stakes of this moment. So the magazine defends an emotional but totally misleading image because it makes their point toward their agenda. And I guess making the point, of course, is more important than reporting the facts, doing a little due diligence. The image has become a potent prop in the left's continuing narrative that immigrant children are being held in something akin to concentration camps, internment camps, etc. Well, like this photogenic protest that was held at the Capitol yesterday featuring a dozen children in Mylar blankets like those given kids at the border shelters. Well, it's important that we do not blame the kids in protests like this one. They're kids. But we should blame the adults who use them in this way, turning them into pawns in a political struggle through their own propaganda. Let's discuss the media's preference for emotional manipulation over the facts with Democratic strategist Joel Payne, Howard Kurtz, host of Fox News' Media Buzz, and Mark Krikorian, executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. Gentlemen, happy Friday. Howie, I've got to say, when I first saw the image, we were talking amongst our staff, and I said, I wonder if that child actually was separated from her parents. And lo and behold, she wasn't.
This is precisely why trust in the media is plummeting. Now, I understand why Time magazine, which seems to run an anti-Trump cover every other week or so, wanted that iconic image on the cover. Many of us in the business assumed that she'd been separated from her mother, but once that proved to be flat out false, Times editors should have had the candor and the common decency to say, we were wrong, we made a mistake, we regret it not. Well, you know, it's perfectly fine because it's a metaphor for the entire controversy.
Well, when we conservatives make mistakes, we are driven through threats and intimidation, and we apologize. Like, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes on air. And you apologize. Like, you know, I shouldn't have said that. You know, you're on the air as much as I am. You're going to say stuff sometimes like, oh, I was tired. When they screw this up, Krikorian, I've got to tell you, it goes right to the core of what so many of us know about the border that goes unreported, selective reporting by the media. They'll report one series of sad stories, but completely ignore the chaos and the carnage on the other side of the immigration debate, which we're going to get to later in the show with the Angel Moms.
This kind of thing happens all the time, and it's not even just an immigration thing. This is part of basically a long history of what you might call atrocity propaganda. You know, the Germans invaded Belgium and people were saying, well, they're bayoneting babies and raping nuns. It was a political point to create moral panic and stampede people. Remember during the Bush administration, the supposed epidemic of church burnings? Again, made up, fake for political purposes. This is just part of that same kind of strategy.
Joel, Stephanie Ruhle, who's an anchor on MSNBC, got very much emotional as she was reporting on this story. Let's watch.
Help us understand what this kind of damage does to these young people, because they are going to be a member of society. And it makes me think, where do you think MS-13 was born? In Los Angeles,
Absolutely.
where you often see these angry gangs sprout up. And I worry that you're creating Terminator-like characters that will seek vengeance. We must care.
If we enforce our immigration laws, people who cross our border, not through a normal port of entry, but just walking across the border, if we enforce our laws, we're risking creating Terminator-like characters.
I'm sure I'm not the only person up here who's not outraged that there are 2,300
Okay, can you answer the
children.
question that I just asked you? And then we know how many children. They're going to be all reunited by Sunday, Joel.
And Laura, what you're trying to say is that because Time put something on their cover that was wrong, that invalidates the entire story.
No, it demonstrates the
2,300 children
no, first of all, there are 1,800. Get your facts right.
Sorry,
and by
only 18.
Sunday,
Only
and by
1,800.
Sunday, Joel.
Sorry, it's only 1,800
talking over me isn't going to make your argument any more logical. By Sunday, the administration has reported almost all of them will be reunited by June 24th, which that might not be good enough for you.
I'm glad they finally came around to getting a plan together.
So, Joel, you know, I assume that when...
See, that's what I'm worked up about.
You know, I assume when the American media describes our enforcement of our immigration laws as concentration camps, internment camps, you're Nazis, Donnie Deutsch. Let's play this. Maybe Joel will react to a soundbite. Let's play it.
If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis, going, you here, you here. And I think we now have to flip it, and it's a given the evilness of Donald Trump. But if you vote, you can no longer separate yourself.
You going to react to that one, or are you going to talk about the numbers?
I'm happy to react to that. Listen, the idea, if it doesn't bother you that children are being separated from their mothers and their fathers,
bothers me?
and being put in internment camps, and that's exactly what it is. It's internment camps. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, so
if you're comfortable with that, and by the way, I know you had a guest here yesterday. I know you had a guest here yesterday. I know you had a guest here yesterday who said that they talked to some African Americans. Well, I also talked to some African Americans, and I can tell you, none of us thought what she said had any basis of reality whatsoever.
I don't know what you're pointing
Rachel
out.
Campos Duffy last night. Yes.
Okay, so what I think right now is that America wants to be fair and compassionate, yet understand that we have a border that needs to be enforced.
But does our president want to be fair and compassionate?
I would assume, Joel, that you agree a nation should have borders, or no?
Of course it should have borders.
Okay, so when you have a border, when you have a border, Joel, when an individual crosses the border, should that individual be prosecuted at all?
We had a president who deported more people than anyone in history just 2 years ago, called Barack Obama, who's called the reporter-in-chief, managed to do it while respecting the sanctity of migrant families.
Okay, so Joel won't answer the question. He says we should have borders, but there should be absolutely no penalty for crossing the border, because then if you penalize someone, you're a Nazi, you're putting people in internment camps, you're going to concentration camps, and anyone who voted for Trump is a Nazi. That's where the left is, and that's why they're going to get killed in the 2020. You said they're internment camps.
You did.
Okay, well, guess what? CNN today reported that the residential center where illegal immigrants are being held in Virginia, Bristow, Virginia, is clean, it's nice. The children
Yeah, it's
are well
better than
cared.
the projects.
The children are being well cared for.
Better than the projects.
Actually, Britt Hume works at those, and it's a beautiful place where the
Better than the
kids are being
projects.
taken care of very well.
Laura,
Unless you want to take some into your house, actually, and give them a better life, that's what our
Better
government
than
is
the
able to do.
projects.
I just jump in. There's a lot of emotion in this story, genuine emotion. And there's some fair journalistic criticism of the way the administration has handled this in the conflicting stories. But when you have this Time cover, particularly the president towering over this crying toddler as if he doesn't care, he's heartless, plus the extreme Nazi rhetoric, which just has no place in this, then it tends to overshadow and maybe even make people distrustful of those who are at least trying to do a fair job of reporting this story.
Mark.
You know, this isn't the only false example, even in this debate. There was a story that spread like wildfire that a baby, while nursing at his mother's breast, was ripped away. It was a lie. It was made up. There was a picture of a kid in a dog kennel, which was staged at a protest, but was distributed by people like Jose Antonio Vargas, who's supposedly a respectable journalist, as though it was an actual thing. This is part of a pattern to display false images or misleading images to stampede people against immigration.
So
Andrew Hannon is a federal district court judge in Brownsville, Texas. In 2013, he had to hear one of the cases. It was a case about a human trafficker that had been aided and abetted by a parent in the United States who had already been deported once out of the United States. This is what he wrote. By fostering an atmosphere whereby illegal aliens are encouraged to pay human smugglers for further services, the government is not only allowing them to fund the illegal and evil activities of these cartels, but it is also inspiring them to do so. By virtue of this DHS policy under Obama, American citizens are helping fund these evil ventures with their tax dollars. And that was 2013 in Texas Federal District Court. We are creating a perverse incentive, Joel, where because to enforce our laws means, okay, you're a horrible, awful, rotten Nazi concentration camp, internment camp, according to you. So it's an anytime you imprison someone, it's an internment camp. So if it's an internment camp, your choice is being called a Nazi, or you put people in internment camps, according to Joel, or you aid and abet the cartels, which are getting, Mark, you know this, 15 to 20,000 per person to bring them to the border, correct?
There's a mature.
Yes, what we're doing here is specific to people who bring children. This is the important thing. The percentage of people the Border Patrol is arresting who have kids with them has been increasing significantly. It was 3%, just 3% of all arrests in 2013. 18% of arrests in 2017. Last month, it was 1/4 of all the people.
What is Judge Hannon saying here? He's saying that the policy encourages individuals to bring children, and in 13% of the time, according to DHS, they're not their children. They're being picked up along the way because it is, as another person said, a fast pass into the country. Joel.
There's a mature way to enforce our borders and enforce our rules. By the way, Barack Obama did it. So the fact that Donald Trump lies every week and says there's an immigration crisis, you want to know what the crisis is? The one he created this week by creating a ridiculous family separation policy. That's what the truth is. Now, that might not be convenient, but that's actually the truth.
So you do know the federal judge who decided after the Flores case that children cannot be held by DHS longer than 20 days. Donald Trump didn't write that opinion. Donald Trump didn't interpret the Flores consent decree in the way that Judge Dolly G did. Correct? You do know that.
It is a strategy by Donald Trump
not a
to
strategy.
separate these families to try and deter
well, it's not a strategy. It's a legal recourse. I mean,
Jeff Sessions.
Stephen Bannon's not in the White House anymore, but that's a nice try. Howie, I think the American media has to be even-handed. I think you could do fair criticism, as you said, as the way the White House decided to roll this out. They didn't get ready for the images are powerful, and no one wants to see a child crying. No one wants to see a mother, any mother. That little girl on the cover of Time magazine, you know, when I see her, I see the thousands of kids that I've seen in Guatemala on the streets, in villages, in orphanages. Just to get a hug, they're happy. To have a ball, to have someone to play with them, they're happy. They're desperate for attention, love, and sometimes food. They're desperate. To see that picture, it's a heartbreaking thing as a mother.
And as a father. And when the president did end the family separations, and of course there's still families to be reunited, instead of the president saying, well, you know, at least now he's doing the right thing in their view, it was like, well, it was too late, he should have done this. You know, they never given the benefit of the doubt. And just a quick word on the children in blankets at that Senate protest yesterday. Everybody has the right to protest, but to use the kids as props says to me that some of these protesters are more interested in scoring political points and getting in front of the cameras than
there were 12 kids, 12, 13 years old, and one of them was very articulate. It's like President Trump is incarcerating these children. It was amazing. He was 12 years old. Like, I don't think I could have said that at 12. But it's something about using kids in a protest. I've never liked it.
Bringing out a cage.
Or being in a cage. I mean, don't put a child in a cage. I don't care anything.
Yeah.
Great panel. Spirited on a Friday night. And by the way, is this how the radical left has become on immigration? Have they become this radical or not? Calling for the abolition of the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency altogether? That includes actress turned candidate for New York Governor Cynthia Nixon.
ICE has strayed so far from its mission. It's supposed to be here to keep Americans safe, but what it's turned into is frankly a terrorist organization of its own that is terrorizing people who are coming to this country. They have strayed so far from the interests of the American people and the interests of humanity. We need to abolish it.
We need facts in the city, not sex in the city. And she's not alone. NBC reports that 15 Democratic congressional candidates are calling for the defunding or dismantling of immigration customs enforcement. Back to my point, we don't want any borders, right? That's no borders at all. Let's discuss this with Hector Garza, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Hector, I know you drove 2 hours to be on this show tonight. That's so inspiring. Thank you so much. I know you've had a long day. When you hear ICE being described as a terrorist organization, and again, she's a candidate for Senate, but she's being followed around by all these media folks because, of course, she's a former actress and so forth. But what runs through your mind? I mean, I think ICE and the Border Patrol is like 50% Hispanic at this point. So to hear Nazi concentration camp, internment camp, and now terrorist organization, what's your reaction?
Shame on her, Laura. She's offending our law enforcement agents, not only ICE agents, but Border Patrol agents. These are the law enforcement officers that go out there every single day and risk their lives to serve the community, serve the American public, and protect our country. It's just very, very unfortunate that she would be spreading this type of hateful rhetoric.
One of the things that Hans von Spakovsky wrote in the Heritage Foundation, I guess it was yesterday, Heritage Foundation website, he talked about who's responsible for this because, you know, the left will say Donald Trump created this crisis. It's all Donald Trump. No one else is responsible. But I think a fair assessment, and the Trump administration made a decision that to stop the crush at the border, we had to do zero tolerance. That's what their decision was. But there are other decisions made along the way, Hector, that you see every day. Parents sending children alone on an 1,800-mile journey, and parents deciding to bring children with them on an 1,800-mile journey through very dangerous territory to present themselves at a non-legal crossing into the United States. That is a responsibility that they decide to take on, and there are consequences, as there are in Mexico when you're caught crossing the border illegally.
So first of all, these parents that are bringing these kids over here, they're breaking the law. But not only are they breaking the law, but they're also endangering their kids when they bring their kids along the journey. And it's unfortunate because if we don't take action, we're going to continue to encourage illegal immigration. And by doing so, it's going to put a lot of these people in danger. A lot of them are going to get killed, murdered, raped, and a lot of them will not make it through Mexico because Mexico is a very dangerous country, and they're not doing enough to stop these crossings that are coming from Central America. Again, Hector, if we're gonna care, let's care about illegal aliens not being placed in the trunks of vehicles. Let's care about illegal aliens not being placed in the back of tractor trailers in 120-degree heat. Let's be real. Let's go to the facts. Not about this made-up situation at the border with separated families. Unfortunately, these people broke the law, and they need to be held accountable. And the people that are in these countries should not be coming here because they'll be breaking the laws as well.
Hector, what is your thought on what might happen with the numbers approaching the border now that the president has announced there will not be any further separations of families. They didn't back off necessarily in the zero tolerance, but they're not going to separate families. Do you think that will encourage more people to come, or the news will take a while to get down to Central America?
So, Laura, it's definitely going to increase. We saw it in 2014 under the Obama administration. Under the Obama administration, everybody was under catch and release. These people would cross the border, unaccompanied minors would cross the border, and we were releasing them into the country to their relatives. All that caused was more illegal immigration, more people making this dangerous journey from Central America, and our resources being overwhelmed here in the United States. It's something that's very interesting, Laura. During the Obama administration, the influx was so amazing. It was so much illegal crossings that a lot of people that the Border Patrol was detaining back then under the Obama administration, they didn't even have access to water, restrooms, or food. Under the Trump administration, it is the totally opposite. People are being taken care of. They're being provided with medical services. They're being provided with food, with shelters, with proper detention facilities. That wasn't happening in the Obama administration. It's happening now.
Hector, thank you so much.